Hi, I'm Paul Duchesne, and welcome to Mama Paul in the Kitchen. Today is Tuesday, August 10th, 2021. We're going to do two things today. We're going to make some corn on the cob, and we're going to make the little saute that I've been regularly doing with the exotic mushrooms and the green vegetable and the pine nuts and the turmeric. Well, I started this a little bit ago, and I've already got the corn on the cob in the pot cooking, and I have the mushrooms already marginally sauteed. And the reason this is all done already is because, well, I started off here with the Maitake mushrooms, which are a really exotic medicinal mushroom. It's really good for diabetes, it's good for cancer, it's good for reducing tumors, lowering blood pressure, quite a few, lowering blood sugar. It's got a really earthy flavor to it. Supposed to be anti-carcinogenic and supposed to help reduce the size of tumors if you happen to have any. It's got a lot of good health benefits. Like I said, diabetes, hypertension are the main listing medicinal benefits. So what I've done is I've sauteed them up. What happened was I cut my finger, and I put a little slice in the finger as I was doing this a few minutes ago. So I had to get the camera off. I shoot live to tape, and I have not yet learned how to use the editing system. So if I blow it with the vegetables, which I did, they're already cooked. So I'm going to turn the mushrooms back on. I cooked the mustard greens. I was going to do mustard greens today, and I've already blanched the mustard greens, and that's where I cut my finger. Mustard greens, the reason I wanted to use mustard greens is there was a little article in the food section about a week ago, and they were talking about mustard greens, and they were talking about how difficult they were to work with and how strong they were and how they were really good for you but really hard to get into your diet. And I don't find it that hard to get into my diet. Something like mustard greens, I'm going to dice them up. I'm going to add them to the mushrooms. I'm going to add the turmeric and the pine nuts, and we'll see what we get. So let me just try not to cut myself to death here. I literally have about 5 Band-Aids on here and surgical tape on top of the whole thing. It just wouldn't stop, but it finally got it contained, and we are back to where we started. So it might be a little bit strange doing this in the 2 parts like this, but as I've said in the past, these shows I am practicing how to be on camera, talk to the camera, and get something done in the kitchen. It's much easier just sitting at the chair downstairs and doing this because I'm going back and forth. But so let's get the flame back on the mushrooms, and we will then get a little heat going back. These are the mushrooms here. Maitake mushrooms, M-A-I-T-A-K-E. M-A-I-T-A-K-E. A couple little shreds were left over here. Add that in. Now, how much exactly? I'm thinking maybe half of this right now will be enough. So I blanched the mustard greens, let them cool off, wrung them out, and now we're going to add them into the mushrooms. And sort of wanting to get about an equal proportion, and I think that might be about, yeah, a little bit more maybe, but not too much more. I don't want to overpower it. Yeah, I think that's going to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the rest of these mushrooms, excuse me, the rest of the mustard greens on the side, and I'll probably add those cooked mustard greens into my salads. I'll put them in a little jar, and as I make my salads during the week, I'll add a sprinkle of that into the salad mix. It's not a salad, it's not a raw vegetable, but it's certainly not going to hurt. The other 2 items we're going to put in there are the turmeric, and I always buy a nice fresh turmeric. Looks a little bit like sort of a cross between it sort of grows like ginger. It looks a little bit like ginger. And I have my own, this particular grater I just use for turmeric. And the reason is, you'll see it's orange. It's orange like this. You won't get that out of there. And if you want to dye something, I don't doubt that you could use turmeric as a dye here somewhere. So I'm going to grate that all up, and I'm going to add that to the mushrooms and the mustard greens. And the last thing we're going to put in will be the pine nuts. So I'm going to get this, scoop this up here. Okay. Get all that in there. And get it up with the knife. And let me use some spring water, which I have in here, and I'll just sort of rinse it off. Get the steam going there. And last but not least, the pine nuts. Now, pine nuts, I want you to look at these pine nuts in my hand right now. Now these, if you go to the store to buy pine nuts, you're going to find frequently two types. The less than $10 a pound and the closer to $15 a pound. The less than $10 a pound are from China. Now I want you to look at these. Can you see these in the camera? Anyway, they're really a nice, clean, vibrant color. They're clear, and these are all organically grown. These are from Oregon. And the Chinese pine nuts that are the bulk of what you find in the stores they're a little bit yellower. They're definitely not as fresh. You bite into them, you can hardly taste the oils in them. They have a little bit of a pine nut flavor, but nothing to write home about. These, on the other hand, are the complete opposite. Turn that down. All right. I'm going to let that go with a little bit, tiny bit more steam. And one ingredient I almost forgot. When you're cooking with turmeric, you always want to add black pepper. You need the black pepper to activate the turmeric and get all the medicinal qualities out of it. Okay, so that should have done it. And this is that new frying pan I was telling you about the week before, the EvoCast, I believe the name of it. EVACO, EvoCast. And these are sensational pots. I've been using this for over a month now. I bought one for my son. And they have this little extra high side there, so when you flip something, it flips much more easily and you don't lose anything. So that's what the dish looked like at the end of the day. And what I wanted to do was just taste the wow. Mustard greens. The little bit of blanching took that real hard edge off the mustard greens. Nutritionally, I suspect they lost a little bit of their raw enzymes, but they are still loaded with, wow, a lot of nutraceuticals in there. Good dish, really good dish. The other one over there is the corn on the cob. So I got the corn, and I've had this on for a while, it's cooked. What I wanted to do with the corn on the cob, it's a great season for corn. The corn has been absolutely sensational. And I've got these really cute little corn holder there. Now there's two things you can do with corn on the cob at the end of the day. You're either going to put butter, salt and pepper, which is my usual favorite, and I like butter and I use a lot of butter. But having said that, last week when I made the brown rice tofu sandwiches, I used the Miso Tahini spread. And that was the base of the sandwich. Well, I had a bunch of this Miso Tahini spread left over. I've had it in a jar in the basement where it's about 60 degrees. So I didn't want to leave it upstairs where it's 90. I didn't want to put it in the refrigerator where it's 30. So I like 60, and it's still nice and soft and almost fresh, but didn't go bad. Miso tahini on top of, now this might look a little strange, and the color may not look terribly inviting. Having said that, this is absolutely sensational. Miso tahini, so when normally you would put butter, salt, and pepper. The butter would be the tahini. The tahini would be equivalent to the butter, the fat, and the salt, well, the miso would be equivalent to the salt. So the difference is the whole thing is brown instead of clear like the butter would be. But, like I said, having said that, this is, let me give it a little bite there, see. Whoa. Wow. Sensational. The corn is delicious. The miso tahini on it is delicious. Excellent. I'm going to put that to the side. Put the miso tahini to the side. I'm just going to talk for about 2 minutes about the last week's show. I made the brown rice tofu sandwiches on last week's show. And 2 weeks ago, I made a frozen tofu. Frozen tofu is something I've been thinking about for years, and I talked about that before I did it. And I had frozen the tofu months ago, took it out of the refrigerator, squeezed it out. The protein had all held together and the water was all wrung out. I diced it up and I added it to a little mixture with some carrots and scallions and some mushrooms. It was okay, but I wouldn't write home about it and I wouldn't make it again. If I was going to do anything with a frozen tofu, I would add it to something like let's say a lasagna. If you wanted to make a vegetarian lasagna and you were looking for some protein, that would be like a beef substitute. It would be more like a ground beef substitute. There's, I'm sure, some other things you can do with it. The point was, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. I didn't like the dish. If I was going to make a scramble with tofu, I would just use whole tofu. Okay, so don't rush out and make that dish from a couple of weeks ago. It wasn't that good. The brown rice tofu sandwich, however, last week. Now, I complained a little bit about tofu, how I'm not really that big a fan about tofu. But at the end of the day, it was absolutely delicious. Now, I had bought an Hodu tofu from, that's not the company I created, which is what Wildwood. It was a new company in Oakland, and they make a really good tofu. I had marinated it, baked it. It was in the brown rice tofu sandwich. I'm eating the sandwich, and I thought to myself, well, maybe I shouldn't eat the tofu. It's combined, it's the food combining, it's the antithesis of food combining. You don't want to put the protein with the carbohydrate. Having said that, the tofu started to slip out of the sandwich while I'm eating. I said, I'm not going to bother with it. I put it aside. And I'm looking, I said, well, maybe I'll have it. So I took a little bite. Oh my God, it was delicious. I'm not a big tofu. I don't make tofu a whole lot. But I'll tell you, the marinating, the baking, sensational. It was really good. Those are two things. So the sandwich itself, I'm going to make the sandwich on another occasion, and I may separate the protein and carbs and make one that's more paleo, without a wheat kind of a bread. And we'll separate the protein and carbs and see if we can do that. And we might make a few different versions of the sandwich. So I used to make it with a hot dog and sauerkraut. I used to use bacon. I used to make a BLT version. So there were all sorts of versions I made on top of the rice with the salad and the vegetables. So we're looking at doing that. The main thing I want to do is the super salad that I've been working on, and with my fennel and red pepper and my celery that I've been using as the base for my hard vegetables, that I then mix with the lettuce mixes and sunflower sprouts. And I'm just going to put that aside because we're not going to do any of that today. I just wanted to mention that I've been regularly doing that. The other big item that I want to do is I want to, I spent 18 years attempting to invent an organic Twinkie. I did. I have invented it. It never got to market, and it becomes a long story at the end of the day. And I may spend a few sessions showing you how I put this whole thing together. And the key was, for me, was creating a natural herbal hydrocolloidal, which I did with marshmallow root. Okay, there. So the brown rice sandwich, the tofu, in between that, the super salad. Those are the three main items I want to talk about. Last week, and the fourth would be the genetic roulette. The article in the New York Times 2 weeks ago about GMOs, and this was from a food point of view, health food point of view, this was the most disturbing. This was the cover of the magazine about 2 weeks ago, and then this was the lead article, Learning to Love GMOs, which is a complete whitewash, a very well done whitewash of the industry. I've been researching that. I've read it entirely. I'm getting some advice from a few other people on the outside about it, and I'll probably do a whole show about this, but it won't be a kitchen show. It'll be a sit down in the office show about it. And that's all I'm going to do today. I would have done a little bit more, but because of the finger cut, it sort of got in the way of everything, and you can only do things, you can only cut the vegetables once, and once you cut them and put them in the frying pan, that's it for the week. So peace, patience, persistence, and I'll see you as soon as we can. Thanks for joining in today again.